In this series, lowimpact.org talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
Today I'm talking with Lowri, Hedd-Vaughan and Phil McGrath of DEG, a group in North Wales who are doing some interesting things, very commons related, especially around energy. Hello, Lowri and Phil.
Hello, bore da.
Dave. Good morning.
Hi. So I'd like to find out more about what you're doing, what your ambitions are, what barriers you face. And I guess you know that you contacted us. You know, in Stroud, we're trying to build commons, and we're working with specialists to bring assets into community ownership without debt or giving away equity, but with a reasonable return for investors and with strong asset locks and the ability to federate with other projects around the country and eventually the world. So after this initial interview, I'd like to bring you together with specialists so that you can ask questions of each other and see where we might collaborate. And if we have any tools that might help you. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay, let's get stuck in. So first of all, before we look at what you're doing, why are you doing it? What's your motivation?
I think there's a combination really. Opportunity. I think there's a strong sense of wanting social justice in this part of the world. I think post-industrial communities, there's a legacy of wealth extraction from Wales's natural resources, the highest levels of poverty across the UK. I think 1 in 4 children now, and the rising costs, financial, ecological and social costs of fossil fuels. So those are the main motivators for DEG as a community interest company, and that's taken us in lots of different directions. As my project, Gwyrddni, Phil's project, Cyd-Ynni.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about those different directions. So tell us about some of the things that you're doing up there.
DEG as a CIC has been up and running for about 11 years. Started out as consultancy facilitation for community ownership projects, so community pubs and community energy predominantly.
Energy and pubs is the main focus.
Yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then it's branched out. My project started about 4 years ago. So we are a community climate action movement. And we set up by delivering climate assemblies. So trying to build that critical mass of engaged, informed local residents, trying to build community, build those social networks, share knowledge, build on existing assets, so that asset-based community development approach. And that's opened up into action plans. So we're delivering across food growing, energy generation, retrofit, circular economy, and bringing arts and culture into the mix as well, that being a really significant factor in the genius loci of Northwest Wales. The cultural heritage is one of our greatest strengths. So it's all being woven together. And then I'll let Phil tell you about Cyd-Ynni.
Yeah, I think personally from growing up here was the sense of you had to move away to succeed or whatever, and then when you do move away, you realize, oh, actually, the area that I grew up in was pretty special, and you would prefer to strengthen that than strengthen somewhere else that probably doesn't need your help. And then gradually you work for people and profit making, and that's not a driver. And then you realize actually when you do community work that is the driver. so then that's how I got into the community energy sector. There was already a co-ordinate established in 2016, which was a partnership between 3 hydros
How are we
in Gwynedd.
pronouncing? How are we spelling that?
So Cyd is CYD, like the Y in synonym, and then Unni, which means energy, is YNNI.
Okay.
So Cyd Unni.
Kid Unni. Okay.
Yeah. So it just means sort of energy together or as one, or yeah, Cyd is together. And yes, in 2016, co-ordinate was set up, and there was 3 hydros that wanted to share knowledge, information, skills rather than doing it individually, because proximately they were close. So they thought, we don't want to do it in silos, let's do it together. And therefore,
So sorry, there were
was set up.
three hydroelectricity schemes.
Yeah. Yeah. Is my volume okay?
I think so.
Is it better to do it with headphones?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. It's okay. Carry on.
Yeah. And so following that initial partnership, co-ordinate was set up to collaborate between the 3, you know, share information, etc., to ensure that the 3 was successful. And since then, those 3 hydros have given hundreds of thousands of pounds back into the communities. You know, all 3 needed community shares to finance. I think 2 of them raised £250,000 in a couple of months.
Wow.
To ensure that they could finance. So there's a real local element to the idea, the natural resource, and the financing of the project as well. And it's been seen as a way of also, you know, regenerating the towns or the areas that they're held.
Which towns are they?
Yeah, so Bethesda just outside Bangor, and then you've got Llanberis,
Okay, yeah.
and then Abergwyngregyn, which is on the A55, where
You have to.
I've heard of Aber Falls.
Yeah, you might have to spell that one, or say it
I'll
slowly.
pop it in the chat.
I'll send
Okay.
it to you.
Okay.
So
Okay, so
yes,
so Syd Unni is like an umbrella organization to look after those to help collaboration between those 3
yeah,
hydroelectric schemes.
Yeah.
And who owns the hydroelectric schemes? Are they cooperatives or?
yeah, they're community owned kicks, so they own them. The shareholders obviously own part of it. They get their percentage every year, or they can reinvest back into the idea. And then following on, co-ordinate moved on to, there was a second iteration of co-ordinate then in 2021, when the original project was coming to an end, the original funding. And it was right in the energy crisis, and in many towns and villages in Gwynedd, you know, the community hall is the only community asset there. So we thought, why won't we concentrate our efforts on the community halls and try and get them decarbonised and stop, you know, trying to save bills. So that was one section, which was try and help the sustainability of community halls, make sure they stayed open, because they were such valuable assets in the community. And then there was the second element, which was to create more community energy projects. One example of that is in a place called Penacroes, and we've used an old factory roof, which is now a decarbonisation hub. And we've put 311 kilowatts on top of the roof.
Oh, right. So you're doing very, very practical things.
Yeah, because we approached the 3 companies there, and we knew there was high energy usage on site. So we thought it's perfect for a smart local energy system, where you use the energy exactly where it's generated. And then we've gone through maybe 9 to 6 months of trying to negotiate feasibility studies, etc. And now we're in a place where they're on the roof. We just need to connect them, and that's going to maybe create £21,000 just from the sales on site for the community energy group. And then we can sell the excess energy to maybe a broker type company that will buy the energy through a PPA, and that could be worth maybe £8,000 more. So, in an area where the deprivation is quite high, and historically there hasn't been a renewable energy project. Now there is an income generating project that hopefully for the next 25 years will bring them in a significant amount, where they can then buy assets in the community, if they're at risk and they're being maybe outpriced by other people who can afford it. At least they can compete. Then they have some tangible assets that they can use to become stronger within their communities.
So can I ask you both, I just want to visualize some sort of a map of where DEG is and what projects it's involved with and what the relationship is with those projects, who owns what and who's connected with what. And so we've just been talking exclusively about Phil's project now, haven't we? So what other projects are there and what relationship do they have with DEG? Do you see what I mean? I just want to sort of see a map.
It would be a very complicated map. I think that's the beauty of where we are. There's such a rich history of community organising here. I think going back 60 years for the Welsh language movement, 100 years for Eisteddfods and cultural, these annual celebration events. So we have really active volunteer-led community organising happening everywhere. So across Eryri, Northwest Wales, if you look at the swathe of the mountains of Eryri down to the Llyn the Llyn Peninsula, you would see across that map something like 12 community-owned pubs on small village high streets. You have social housing subsidised by holiday accommodation properties next door. My project, Gwyrddni, are working with 5 distinct geographical communities. You might call them kind of micro bioregions. So they would be effectively valleys, kind of water catchment areas. That's the kind of scale that I'm working on with Gwyrddni. And yeah, as Phil's mentioned, all of these community halls that Phil's been supporting to decarbonise. Lots of those are being transferred into community ownership. I'm thinking in Blaenau Ffestiniog, there's a youth centre and co-working spaces and a hardware store. We have community-owned cinema and theatre in Hedd-Vaughan. So yeah.
Do you know how many projects altogether?
Sorry?
Do you know how many projects DEG is involved with altogether?
DEG as part of the Cymunedoli network.
Oh, hang on, that's another network. Hang on. I'm trying to picture how it all fits together.
Yeah, we do have an organogram that I could maybe send to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So direct involvement. I don't know, Phil, could you put a number on? So there's Gwyrddni, Cydynni, we have Cartrefi Clyd, which is a national gold standard retrofit assessment service. And then there's
in-house housing efficiency and sort of non-domestic efficiency service, where the team will go out and do reports, efficiency reports on say a chapel or a sports club, etc. And it edges and flows because there'll be funding for a couple of years and the project will come to an end, and then there'll be a new one. So it's continually changing. But yeah, that's the core. We have the climate change assemblies that moved on to sort of the action plans and delivering the action plans. Then we have the community energy side, and then we have the housing efficiency or the non-domestic efficiency. And we all work together. For example, I'm a partner on the climate change assemblies, and Lowri mentioned earlier within that, energy is a big sort of factor, a big sort of one group within the climate assemblies. So I would have helped them initially develop maybe their ideas or think of sort of the planning of ideas. And now it's moved on because it's an action plan. I'll help them. Well, I'll be a resource for them to develop the whole project from, scoping, feasibility to actually the build and delivering the project. So it all intertwines.
So it's
but we're all separate as well.
It's a changing patchwork of
Mm.
of projects around community ownership and
Yeah,
energy.
I'd say that we are probably a kind of a seedbed accelerator broker
Right. Okay.
type of organization. Yeah, there's a lot of hand holding, an awful lot of tentacles, and facilitation. I'm not sure if that's helpful or if I'm just confusing you entirely.
It's a fantastic, it's a fascinating, network. How did you start? How did you get started? I'm talking about DEG in particular.
DEG started, it was Grant Paisley. It was, I think it was mostly him to begin with, wasn't it? As in a kind of consultative role. He seeded a few projects and kind of supported the development of a few of these. And
who's he?
So he's director,
right?
Founder and director. Who's at the moment is working for Welsh Government, developing their National Energy Service.
And he's still the director.
He's still a director, yeah. And it was 3 employees for a little while. I think we're up to, are there 10, 11 of us now?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your ambitions? What would you like to happen?
Personally, we're due to have a little coming together, aren't we, as DEG? I think in a month's time. So I think there's a refining of the vision that needs to happen. I don't think there's a huge hungry appetite or ambition. I think that our success has come from growing organically and being able to be agile and to adapt and to respond quite quickly as opportunities emerge. I think we have that kind of flexibility within the organization to kind of follow where the energy emerges within the communities that we're a part of. The ambition for Gwynedd is to have seeded lots of local action groups, to have energy generation, to have largely self-sustaining communities in terms of food, energy, social resilience, cultural richness, and circular economy, especially. I feel there's a lot of interest in waste reduction, in repair, in borrowing, in libraries of things and repair cafes and school uniform swaps. I think that's really kind of grabbing the imagination of a lot of people in our communities at the moment, that kind of the co-benefits of.
But you were saying that there's very, very strong social bonds in your area anyway.
Yes.
And that's not the case in a lot of places, is it, nowadays?
No, I don't think so.
No, can I just say, Lowri, I think one of the things in school, like I tell people that are fascinated from outside the areas, you know, Lowri, the same as me, would have gone to school with people who were named after like the river next to the house, or you know, the hill or the mountain or anything associated with nature. You know, it's unbelievable how many people have those in their names, whether it be first or a middle name. And yeah, there's just that connection, and that's why it's been retained. And I think the same because, you know, obviously we're both speaking our second language here, and there's almost an unbroken civilization of over 2,000 years of language here, and it goes deep. And maybe people from the outside just don't realize that because they might have not known the history. But yeah, when you're named after places, you tend to want to stick around and sort of be guardians of the land almost, which I think is pretty cool. When I've traveled elsewhere and I've told people, and they're like, "Cool." So yeah, there are strong social connections, definitely. And
I think there's definitely an ambition to have more community ownership, especially around housing. That's one project that Gwyrddni's set up now. We have a new micro community area partnership. We're looking at local housing needs assessments. We're looking at facilitating co-ops, asset transfers from the local authority, be that land or forests or agricultural or commercial properties on high streets, and bringing those back into community management. Yeah.
And I guess that, you know, that we're building a housing commons in Stroud.
Yes.
Very early days, but we hope to build toolkits to help people in other communities do the same. We want to do it without mortgages, without going into debt with the banking sector, and with very strong asset locks so that they never go back onto the market again. They're owned by the community in perpetuity. So we're very, very happy to talk with you about that, and to we may even be sort of looking at helping to set up franchises, not profit-making franchises, obviously, but community-owned franchises with the toolkits to help people do it. So we can certainly talk some more about that if you'd like to.
It was that slogan, I think, when I first saw your website that drew me to. It's such a simple message. So own it together, make it affordable, keep it forever. I think that was a bit of a eureka moment for me, just seeing it in those terms.
Oh, that's music to my ears.
Our networks are, you know, we have deep roots and long branches, and it's really fruitful. But sometimes there are so many layers of interaction that it can be difficult to kind of convey that message to reach new people and to bring new people into the conversation. So yeah, it was really inspiring to see that message of community ownership and collaboration communicated so succinctly.
It's very early days in Stroud and Liverpool, but we think we've got some very interesting tools. And we want to talk to other groups, other existing groups, about you know, whether those tools might be useful to them, and that's certainly what I'd like to talk with you about. Are you volunteer run? You say you've got paid roles. How many paid roles? And how do you generate your money? Do you generate your own money, or is it funded, or from where?
DEG roles are predominantly grant funded.
Where from?
So we have Welsh Government, Wales and West Utilities, and the Lotteries Climate Action Fund. I think those are the three. Do you have,
Yeah.
you might have an extra couple, Phil?
So government, but it's the Welsh Government Energy Service, which has funded my role for a couple of years. But that's come to an end now. But through project management of projects, we've raised our own capital to sort of prolong the project for a couple of months. So we have that option. But yeah, mostly Lowri said we have the efficiency work that brings in money. So you know, you need to do a lot of reports to fund, you know, 3 or 4 jobs. So it's not quite enough.
So do you employ
But possibly,
fundraisers, or have you just sort of worked out how to do it yourselves and
Yeah, we've done it ourselves. The Lottery Fund was a collaborative between 5 social enterprises, led by Grant Paisley, the director of DEG, back in 2020, 2019, 2020. So yeah, most of our big grant applications have been kind of collaborative efforts. And we're lucky to have lots of expertise in the area across the social enterprises that have been successful for 10, 15 years, some of them.
yeah,
Working
I
as
think
consortia.
just thinking about the establishment of Killarney in 2016, because those hydros have been so successful, and because the energy prices have been amazing for them, unfortunately for others, they've been able to get a lot of capital behind them, and they've been in a position where they could then fund other projects as seed funding with no risk, which is exactly the situation we want to be in.
tell me a bit more about what you mean about the energy prices?
Well, when the energy crisis hit, you know, if you're an energy generator, you know, you are being paid a lot of money to generate that energy. Just unfortunately, if you're buying the energy, it's a lot more expensive than it used to be.
I think, was it
So for them,
2018, the feed-in tariffs were much more profitable.
and then, you know, the feed-in tariff on solar has disappeared, and the hydros. And then you had to rely on a good business case, which was really difficult. But when the energy crisis hit, it didn't really make a difference because the increase was so vast. Then they were making a lot of money and they didn't have to worry about any business case. So then what happened was they had a lot of capital and they wanted to share it because that is their memorandum of understanding, you know, that's their cause. And yeah, they were able then to finance other projects that are now going to be a self-financing project, just with a tiny bit of help, which may have taken us a couple of years to find individually for like 5 or 6 separate projects. So you can see the cumulative effect of just one project. You know, there was a sprout of about 5 or 6 projects that they were able to fund that will, and they will be able to be funding. Sorry, I'll say that again. They'll now be able to fund other projects from those individual projects themselves.
Yeah.
So they won't need grant money, you know.
That's the important thing,
yeah.
isn't it? To get yourself self-perpetuating, self-funding.
You can
Yeah,
tell that we're
and-
used to talking about this stuff in Welsh, Dave.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just thinking, so like in Blaenau Ffestiniog, which is really deprived area, but it's culturally rich. You know, we were thinking of creating a Sesco almost, so almost like an electric selling company. And you would combine maybe 13 buildings together, and you would sell that electric individually to each of the tenants in the house. but the owner would be the one community energy group. So rather, if you just took one building with 4 kilowatts, which is okay if you're just a house like with 2 or 3 bedrooms, but if you want to create some money to reinvest in the community, you need some kind of scale. So 100 kilowatts plus. And we've been trying to develop that kind of project in Blaenau where you just combine a lot of buildings, and then then you can get some capital in. It's hit some groundworks because it's a newly designated World Heritage Site for slate. And that means if in a deprived area where they're desperate for solar panels and to save bills, you probably now have to spend well over close at least £2,000 just to check if you can get solar panels on your roof through the planning system, and then the heritage body that looks after the World Heritage Site, which is CADU, which is like historic England. I think you have in England. They now require a heritage impact assessment. So I think they cost at least £1,000. So we're trying to work through the politicians saying, how can this be acceptable when you're trying to save bills, trying to decarbonize, and someone's telling you because you once exported slate, they're probably ensured that you were actually poor in the end. You're actually going to remain poor because you're going to have to pay at least £2,000, which would make getting solar panels ineffective, and it wouldn't be viable really.
Well, that makes no sense. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to work out, but the initiative is there, and it's just working through those issues.
So do you? So tell me again, how many full-time equivalent staff you have?
Full-time equivalent would be 6.
And volunteers?
Yeah.
Do you have volunteers? Sorry.
Everyone we work with within our communities are volunteers.
Right.
So across all the projects that we're developing, everyone else would be neighbours, citizen volunteers. And yeah.
And how do you attract volunteers, and how do you keep them and maintain relationships with them?
A lot of them emerge organically. Lots of them are.
They just find you.
They find us. I also kind of proactively undertake community engagement. So I host events and talks and local walks. So providing interesting, engaging spaces for people to come along, to meet each other, and to engage in broader conversations around place and belonging and ecology and history. So yeah, there's an ongoing programme of engagement. That's Gwyrddni as a community climate action project. That's our main focus, is that kind of ongoing engagement, constantly reaching out and bringing new people in, bringing the lesser heard voices. There's definitely a core of the people that turn up to every council meeting and public meeting, and those voices who are a very strong sense of civic duty. But it's having relationships with those individuals, with those kind of super connectors, if you like, within communities, that then I try to end every conversation with, who else could we ask to join this conversation? Is there anyone else that I should be talking to? And then I talk to them and spend lots of time on the phone and in cafes and we go to WI meetings and I talk to people at the side of football fields, and it kind of becomes a way of life. I guess we're decarbonisation evangelists, aren't we, Phil? In a way.
And do you say up front, you know, we're looking for volunteers. Would you like to volunteer with us?
No, it's very rarely that direct. There's, a sense of, we generally listen and meet people where they're at and try to understand what their motivations are, what they're interested in, what they're passionate about. So it would be, it's relationship building first and foremost, and then trying to find opportunities that might fit. It can sound a little manipulative. I hope it doesn't come across that way, but it's everything starts from relationship. I think the success of all the projects, especially the 3 original hydroelectricity schemes that have seeded so much, a lot of those committees were church committees. They know each other from church groups or from organising local cultural events. And somebody wrote a paper about the huge hydroelectricity scheme that was generating £1 million a day for a Japanese company, thinking, why can't we have a slice of this pie? So yeah, it's the person first. It's finding those connections, finding people's interests and values and motivations, and then projects tend to flower from there.
Yeah,
because I think Lowri was part of the first 2 years of the climate assemblies, and what was it? Was it how many hours? 80 hours over the course of a year that you spent with?
No, it was 30 hours in assembly.
30 hours, and then there was additional hours outside of assembly.
Yeah, we that was an open recruitment. So we sent a letter to every household, asked, are you interested in taking part in this process? We'll be learning together, sharing what we know of the area and creating an action plan. So yeah, that was an open invitation to volunteer, if you like.
And
after
that was
some initial promotion.
So that was with 50 people in 5 different communities, but also there was school children apart from that as well. And that was probably the best thing about the whole thing for me. Because, when you ask an adult, what is important in your community, it's completely different to a child. And yeah, seeing them then at the end, the kids present to the adults of how they see the next few years. That was pretty special.
What are the biggest barriers you face, do you think, in when it comes to expanding community ownership in North Wales?
Local authority,
Right.
planning,
Right.
delays, yeah, there's a lot of, I think there's an explicit intention to facilitate more community ownership or community involvement from the local authority, but when it comes down to developing sites, but one example is a primary school that closed down 7 years ago, and there was, as soon as it was closed down, there was a declaration that it would be transferred for community use, and 7 years on, that still hasn't happened. And it's constantly shifting sands, the reasons and the blocks and the excuses why that can't happen, is quite frustrating. So that's one that comes up quite often. I think for you, Phil, there are issues, especially down in Penllyn, which is more rural, more agricultural. There are huge issues with grid connections and grid capacity for larger scale generation. Not sure if you want to speak.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so resource, probably the main one, people to develop these projects, because I don't think many of the projects that we've undertaken would have got to where they were, without the resource funding. So that's a big one, because you're working with a lot of volunteers. Yeah, they're already maxed out with their time, probably, and then so you need someone paid to develop the work, because there's a lot of work involved in just one project. If you think of all the feasibility, all the pre-planning applications, then taking it through planning, negotiating the land. Land was another big one, getting people to give you land or allow you to build on top of a roof or whatever. And then, yeah, as Lowri mentioned, the grid's a big one, because even if you have the best plans in the world as a community group, the grid will smash you down, because some projects have gone through the process and then they've got a grid offer. So you need an offer from whatever your regional DNO is. So it's Scottish Power here. I'm not sure who's in the Midlands there. Is it National Grid?
Yes, as far as I know, yeah.
Yeah. So you do an application to National Grid and say, do you have capacity on the line for this solar farm, community-owned solar farm? And they'll say, no, you can get connected in 2037, which just makes any project unviable straight away. So that's why we've had to move to a smart local energy system, where if you've got like a big sort of commercial outlet and you've got a field next door, then you build the solar panels next door and you can sell the electric to the commercial unit next door. So we only concentrate on those type of projects. What else is a big block? Yeah, those are pretty much the biggest ones.
I mean, there's always some tension around public opinion, isn't there? I think there's some conflict within agriculture, agricultural rural areas, and solar installations, especially. We've got some, I think one of the biggest pre-planning applications in the UK happening on Ynys-Môn, on the island of Anglesey at the moment. And yeah, the public opposition to that is, huge.
Yeah,
I guess it's
which
scale is the problem for the public. I guess it's
and ownership, because I think BP are the ones behind it, even though they don't have their name to it.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And yeah, if I think when you discuss with people, and I've had this in Penllyn where there was an application made for a solar farm, and so the parish council was like, no way. And we spoke to them and we said, okay, would we think about it differently if this was owned by us? If it had the big blocks, parish council owned, and that the profits were going straight to you. And people do tend to start to think differently about it. Yeah, it's just like there's another case, people wanted to put batteries in, and the local councillor straight away is like, no way, not in our beautiful area. And then you're just like, well, you could really make a difference to your local area and sustain it for the next 50 years. You could hide it, you wouldn't have to see it, but you could own it. And that either part ownership, which the Welsh government really wants to increase. These companies turn up with a planning application with almost no community benefit involved. And the councillors straight away just say, no way, if you're not considered the community benefit element, then you're not going to get support. And then you start, well, you could own it. You could actually run this. You know, there are community energy groups locally who would be more than happy to help you develop this and own it. And yeah, people do tend to change their minds. I'll be more willing to.
Well, listen, I'll show this video to specialists at our end, and we'll generate some questions, and we'll maybe have some back and forth via email, and then we'll organize another interview together so both sides can work out what we want to ask each other. And then we'll maybe, if it's all right with you, organize another interview with the common specialists that we're working with. And then we can talk about possibilities for collaboration and shared tools.
Yeah, that could be great. We're especially interested in kind of novel funding models. Now, our network here is just establishing a community endowment fund, and that's across energy. We have lots of large-scale tourism, Zip World, and all of these types of developments. So having a dedicated community-owned and managed fund for all of those large-scale projects, that could provide really agile funding for additional community ownership.
Okay. And any other background information that you want to add that might be useful when we're talking to specialists?
Not from our end. I think I was especially interested in on the low impact websites. Oh, I forget the name of it now, but where people invest by buying future energy use.
Use credit obligations.
Use credit obligations.
Yes.
That was really interesting to me.
Okay.
I don't think that's something that's come up locally for us.
Okay. I mean,
that could be an interesting angle for.
We could certainly focus on that to start with. Yes. Okay. So I'll put links to everything that we've talked about in the description. I might have to ask you to send me links and spellings, especially.
Send you the place names.
Yeah. All right then. So let me get this published and have a chat with specialists at our end, and then we'll work out a program of how we take this forward. And it would be really, really great to collaborate, and because we have got tools for funding and asset locking, federation.
Tools for mapping really complex community networks would be great as well.
Yeah. All right then, guys. Let me get that published, and we'll stay in contact, and then we'll talk again soon.
That's great. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers, Lowri. Cheers, Phil.
Appreciate your time.
Bye.
Bye.
If you like our channel, please consider liking this video and subscribing. The more people like our videos and subscribe to our channel, the more the YouTube algorithm will share them. It doesn't cost anything, so please press the like and subscribe buttons. And if you click the bell icon just underneath as well, you'll get a notification when we upload a new video. Thank you.